Well, thank you very much, everybody, for first of all, for the invitation. It's always wonderful to have an opportunity to talk about Thunder Bay Island. I'd have to say it's both of our probably favorite place to be. Um, like she said, I've been with the Thunder Bay Island Lighthouse Preservation Society now for just a year, but I dove in head first. My husband and I did a lot of work out at the island last year, and I jumped in with the fundraising, and it's just a fabulous, beautiful place, and I hope you all get a chance to come out there and see it too. I live in Osneek and have moved up here 5 years ago permanently, so I feel like I'm home, and it's a absolutely wonderful organization to be involved with. So today we're going to start off with a presentation, and we're going to have questions and answers after the presentation, but we need to allow about 20 minutes at the end because I was told that you would like to see the Restless Viking video that was done last summer. They did a 20-minute documentary from our harbor in Alpena all the way out to the island and to the lighthouse. So you'll sort of have your own little tour of the lighthouse experience and what we do and every trip that we go out. So I think you'll really, really enjoy it. So hold on for that. But first of all, let's see. This is our beautiful Thunder Bay Island, a nice aerial view for that poster. So I'd like to start off with just, we went through our introductions. We're going to talk about the historical structures that are still in existence on the island and reference to some that have already, which are no longer there. We'll talk about more in depth about how the Preservation Society formed and what our role is specifically. And we'll engage you with some discussion about our partnerships and the financial contributions that our partners have helped us with, as well as our grants and organizations that we work with to help us with our preservation efforts at the lighthouse. And then we'll discuss some projects, past as well as our future plans, which is one of them right here that you'll see on this board, and we'll talk about that more in depth. And then we'll have a brief question and answer, so keep those mentally in your head when we get through the presentation, and then we'll watch the video at the end. Okay? All right, first of all, I added this map because a lot of times when I was at the Christmas fundraiser, we met a lot of people at our table and talked about experiences, and a lot of people had no idea that this even exists out there in Alpena, and they've grown up here. So, and they didn't know where it was. A lot of people, is that the one at Presqu'île? And it's like, no, it's not the Presqu'île Lighthouse, and it's not the one on Middle Island. Nope, it's not that one. It's actually just about 3 miles from North Point. So if you're familiar with Thunder Bay, it's part of the National Marine Sanctuary, which was established in 2000. So because we also have all the shipwrecks around the island as well. So if you can maybe see the black flags that are all of the various shipwrecks, and so you can understand why there would be a need for a lighthouse on these rocky limestone reefs and shores. So Thunder Bay Island is right here, and the lighthouse is on the sort of the southeast side of the island. And so all in total, when we go out to the island, it's about 14 miles total by boat to get out to the island. So it's a little bit of an adventure. And so you can see why it would be a little difficult for the regular public to get out there. So that's some of our future projects that we're working on, because we want people to be able to get out there. We want people to understand the history of the island and how it came to be such an important part of Alpena and its history. One of the things that we strive to is to preserve and protect this place. When you go out there, and you'll see it when you watch the video, it's the first word that always comes to my mind is that it's enchanting. It's like a place that time has forgotten. It's untouched. It's a special place. It is only one of 3 alvar ecosystems in the entire world. There's some specific requirements. I'm not sure exactly what those are, but as far as the types of flowers and things like that, and the types of special ecosystems that exist, it's a very rare place. Like I mentioned, the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary has, it's nice that we're a part of that and it's protected under there. But as you can see on this one slide, the water was really far down in this particular picture, so you could actually see the striations in the limestone. So from glacial movement. So we also really recommend, just like when we go to, what's that island out there? Isle Royale. I mean, there's a special place that like, don't take any rocks, don't take anything with you, leave no trace, just take pictures. That's what we want to see happen too here at Thunder Bay Island, is just to leave no trace, no garbage, don't pick wildflowers. And as you'll see too, there's, this is just a sample picture, but you can see pieces of actual shipwreck that are just lying strewn in the water, in shallow waters. So it's important to leave those there because those are wonderful historical pieces just lying in the water. People can go and visit the island. We want to make it, it's a day use park. That is our future goal. But there's no camping on the island, so no overnight staying. It would be really nice if we could stay on the island and just keep working all the time, but we can't do that. And of course, no burning. We don't want to make sure nothing is endangered and happens to befall any fire damage. The lighthouse tower is actually the second oldest of Lake Huron. It was built and commissioned to be built in 1830, where they appropriated $5,000 for the lighthouse to be built because it wound up becoming a very important area because of the shipping that was going through there, but also because of the dangerous rocky reefs. Maybe you've noticed before, but when we have dangerous winds and high winds in the bay, that you'll notice freighters come inside the bay and they sort of park and anchor themselves along the shoreline close to North Point, because it's like safe harbor. It gets them out of the winds as compared to when you go outside of the bay, it's really rough. The winds and the waves get really dangerous out there. So the lighthouse was built and constructed in 1832. And unfortunately, when they were, there was a huge, one of our major storms, like we all know can happen up here, right? It actually washed over the island and destroyed the lighthouse. So it had to be rebuilt. And if you'll notice on the, there's actually like a distinct line here that was part that had to be reconstructed from there on up. So that was sort of like the new area that had to be rebuilt. So the total in 1857, it was raised by another 10 feet. And then it was a total of 63 feet tall. It makes, when you climb up to that lighthouse tower, through the beautiful winding staircase, and you get to that top, you crawl through a door and you creep your way up, but it's a view like no other. It's just positively breathtaking. So that is our beautiful lighthouse. Here's a little peek inside the keeper's quarters, which was built in 1868. There's one of the stairways there where there's lots of restoration work that still needs to be inside, but you'll see a couple of examples where we do have a couple rooms restored and ready to fill with some more historical artifacts. The first keeper was Joseph Duchesne. He resigned within 3 days. He did. I mean, it was a rough life. I mean, they were very much isolated. They, of course, didn't have power back then, like either, right? So the second keeper was Jesse Muncie, and he served until 1843. And then the third keeper, William Terry, he actually passed away on the island. And from what I understand, that was the keeper that what his wife actually had to take over the lighthouse keeping duties because her husband passed, and she had to keep his body preserved until the weather was warm enough and the ships could come and take him for proper burial. So it was a very hard life, very hard life. Then the U.S. Life Saving Service was created in 1876, And as you'll see, the building was actually called, I believe they were a stick style building. And the life-saving service was first, I can't remember the first gentleman, but John Persons, it was his father that was
A lightkeeper, Alonzo.
Alonzo was a lightkeeper. And actually, when John was a little boy, I believe, he actually witnessed one of the collision of the meteor and
The Pewabic.
and the Pewabic in the lake. So he had that firsthand knowledge and experience of that collision back in the day. But he was eventually appointed and the captain of the life-saving service, which was, and he was credited for one, very renowned, and he was credited for saving over 1,000 lives. They didn't have motorboats or anything like that. They had the lifeboats were wooden, and they were approximately 26 feet long, and they had to row. They used oars so in stormy weather, but they were talk about harrowing heroes and some tough people, some tough men. I mean, they would go out in snowstorms, ice storms, have to row for miles to get to people to rescue them. And that's one of the, if you get this book at the end, I mean, there's some wonderful, incredible stories of the heroism and the just resolve of the people that served in this particular life-saving role. And that's one of the boats there, but yeah, it's incredible. And then the Coast Guard, the life-saving service wound up becoming part of the Coast Guard in 1915. And as you can see there, there's one of the Coast Guard station building built in 1930. And then Paul Raykop was one of the station captains, or was he a captain?
He was an officer in charge.
Officer in charge. Okay. And he was stationed in 1955, and he's actually one of the we have a room that we have done a replica and tried to recreate it exactly as he left it back then. And we have some artifacts in that particular room. So that's one of the rooms that we have in the keeper's quarters that is dedicated to his service. And then in September 1980, the station did officially close. It was decommissioned and the light became automated. So, all right. Let me go ahead because Sue Skibbe has been with the Thunder Bay Island Lighthouse Preservation Society since its inception. And I would like her to pick up right here and start off with the mission of the organization. And then she'll go into the projects and so on that she has been firsthand been a part of. So, Sue?
What kind of power do they have?
Solar power. Mm-hmm.
They had generators when they were there, and they actually had a power line that came across from North Point to the island. And the cable went underwater. Portions of it are still on the shoreline on the west side of the island, the big heavy cable. And there were power poles on the island, and we still have some remnants of those. But then later on, it didn't make sense, or they had some issues with the power underwater. I'm not sure which, but they converted to solar. So as Nancy said, our organization started in 1996, and it was by chance. There was a small picture in an article that was in the Alpena News, and one of our early members, her father had actually served on the island, and she saw that the Coast Guard had deemed Thunder Bay Island as excess property, and they were going to turn it over to the GSA to be sold or to be transferred to another government entity if there was no interest. And she riled up the troops and said, we got to form, because this is our early history. Everything that made Alpena what it is started on that island. All the school, the first white child, the first store, the first of everything started on the island. And it was too important to have it just either languish into deterioration or have it go to be sold to an outside entity. So they formed as a 501c3, and we were a pretty sparse group in the beginning, but we were certainly dedicated. And we were able to secure a lease with the Coast Guard. The first lease just gave us the right to restore their buildings and land on the island to restore their buildings. But after a few years, we applied for a long-term lease, and they came and did a pretty thorough evaluation and said, this is the very best thing that we could hope for this island, is to have the Preservation Society be the actual tenant here. And so they extended our lease and still kept proceeding with how they dispose of federal property, which was, they had decided it should go under the auspices of the Bureau of Land Management because it had always belonged to the federal government. It was signed into ownership by Andrew Jackson, and we have a copy of that original document. It's just a copy, but we got it out of the National Archives. Because at the time, the British and the French kind of had ongoing spats going on, and he felt that island was significant because it's a turning point for shipping for all maritime navigation out there in Lake Huron. They come northbound and have to make a course correction at Thunder Bay Island. And so he felt it was really important piece to own. So it's always been a federally owned reservation. So we've been working with the Bureau of Land Management for a long time, but they felt that a nonprofit didn't, in their mind, have enough longevity. So the hierarchy is, if there's a federal entity that would like this federal property, that they have first priority. If there is none, then it goes to a state entity if there's interest, and then a local, and then subsequently a 501c3. We got on the ball, and you have a member here, Don Beam, who worked diligently at getting all this paperwork done. But we became a partner with Alpena Township, that if they would take the island, it was only a $100 application fee. If we wanted to pursue ownership of the island, it was 1/2 of the fair market value, and they got to establish the value. So we thought it was kind of a no-brainer. We could do what we wanted to do if we partnered with the township, and that's what we have done. So it's been a successful partnership for us. We kept pursuing ownership in 2014. We were granted ownership of the first section, the southernmost section of the island, which is about 43.0 acres, but it contains all the historical buildings. So that was basically our priority, get those buildings so that we could become more effective with getting grants. And we were more effective going through the township too, because it opens up different pools of money that we don't have access to. So it's been a good partnership, and we then continued the effort to gain the rest of the island, because the northern portion of the island has the middle section, which has a blasted channel. It has a safe harbor into it. It's protected by Sugar Island, but the Coast Guard blasted a channel in, so it's deep, and then they built a boathouse there. So we needed that safe access, and we're continuing on. That process is not finished yet, but we're sticking to it. Just enter?
Yes.
Okay. And like I said, Alpena Township has been our most highly held partner. They pretty much have supported us all along the way. We have great support from the Michigan State Historical Preservation Office. Some people complain about their restrictions because they are pretty thorough about what you're able to do to a historic building and what you can't. But we have not had a problem. They have been so supportive of us, and they hold the grant funds that are generated through the sale of the license plate that have a little lighthouse logo on. And we have received 3 of those so far, and it's always been closed out successfully. We have gone through some highs and lows with the BLM, only because It's been a long process, but COVID kind of was, put things on the back burner. And then when they got back to working, they had major staff change over. So we had to go through that training process. I think we're back on track again. We've had wonderful support from U.S. Lighthouse Society. They have a fund of grants too that are privately held grant funds. So we use those when we need to leverage state and federal money. Because if you're getting a state or federal grant, if the state got the money from the federal government, then you cannot apply for a federal grant. So U.S. Lighthouse Society is kind of a privately held fund, and it's wonderful because we can leverage their funds to get more money. Besser Foundation, the Walmart Foundation, Northeast Michigan Community Foundation has all supported us with grant funds. Our environmental oversight is done by Huron Pines, and they're wonderful volunteers. In the past 10 years, and we thought this was kind of eye-opening, we have put over $500,000 of investment. That is the amount of hours that we spend, the amount of our own cash, the amount of grants that we've been able to secure. And we felt this was really important. You have to keep track of in-kind anyway if you're using it as a match in a grant. And so we present this every few years to the township so that they can see that their portion is that little tiny green spot. And we're that big red and green and yellow spot. The projects that we've done, the first thing that we had to do when we got out there was replace the roof on the keeper's quarters. It had rotted through and water was infiltrating into the building. So our very first grant was for a standing seam metal roof. And that came from the pool of funds from the lighthouse sale. The next grant that we had to do was repair the stucco on our tower. It had cracked over the years and the water would seep in over the winter and then freeze. And when it froze, it just kept pushing the stucco further and further away. By the time we got the grant to do that, it probably had separated up at the top a good 1.5 feet from the tower. So it was really in bad shape. We were one of only 5 small lighthouse groups that got a grant from the National Park Service to do what is called a historic structures report. And basically it is our Bible that we follow to improve everything that needs to be fixed. They came in and did a thorough assessment of the buildings and then gave us a map of what needed to be done and their estimate of cost. So we use it as our guide for grant monies too. So we in 2019 replaced all the windows in the top of the tower because it seems some people love to target practice with a 22 at windows. So every one of our 10 windows had a hole in it, and it'd been, repaired with silicone, but it wasn't holding. So we got a grant from the U.S. Lighthouse Society, and Meridian Contracting came and they did not sand. They stripped all of the lead paint off the top of the tower, and then primed and repainted, replaced all the windows. In 2022, the Bureau of Land Management moved forward with the transfer of the rest of the property, and they had to remove the hazardous boathouse because they can't transfer property if it has environmental hazards or any other kind of hazard. So they hired a firm that came with barges, and you'll see this in just a bit. It was quite an interesting project. In 2019, we hired a firm and got a grant to do all the painting on the second story because the realization has come that we're getting older and we don't like big heights anymore. And so that has been done. Last year, we took our own funds and purchased a 100-foot rolling temporary dock so that we had better access. So it's come a long way. This is obviously you can see the original picture of the roof, and you can see that little spot that had a piece of plywood on it actually to try to keep the water from coming inside the building, but the whole roof surrounding the chimney had broken down, and so the water was getting in there too. That really pretty red roof is what it looked like after. This is an interesting shot of how they had to take the stucco that was actually coming off and then they chipped away at it until they got to a point where they felt it was stable. And these great guys were out of Kunzat Masonry Restoration in Hubbardston, Michigan, but they rappelled down that thing on bosun's chairs. And that's how they fixed it, because we don't have access to a crane or all that big equipment. So it was a labor of love, believe me, and it took them longer than they thought because the shotcrete had so much wind coming at it that it was blowing everywhere. So they ran out of gunite and had to come back to shore for a whole shipment before they could get finished. This is the restoration of the room that we do have done up on the second floor. We took the closet, the locker closets, and created just a static display, one devoted to the Coast Guard, one to the life-saving station, and then in the end one, it's not in this picture, but we have all the personal effects from Mr. Rykoff, his uniform, all of his military things that he had while he was there. So it makes for some interesting reading. This is our fog signal building. Oh, that wasn't in the project. And we discovered one of these historic metal shingles underneath all these asphalt shingles. So we knew that the asphalt was just a quick repair and the roof was shot. So we got a grant from the state, from the license plate fund, and we found the company that manufactured those very shingles, still in business after 140 some years. Barrage Manufacturing. They're in San Antonio, Texas. And we now have the very shingles that were on that building when it was constructed in 1906. We've replaced some of the doors because obviously they had rotted away. And this is a picture of the tower while the work was being done. I am not sure who the person is from Meridian, but he had just a safety harness on, and he was standing on top of these 2x10s that they had pushed through the tower as a means of like a ladder or something to stand on. And that brave soul painted the ventilation tube in the ball in the tube that was on the top, and some days he would be hanging off the tower. So that's why we don't do those projects anymore. This is a shot from the inside when they were restoring the tower. You'll see our automated beacon there. It is totally solar power. It still runs dusk to dawn, but they had to strip all the paint because it was all lead-based. And there was probably 40 coats, because I think that's what the Coast Guard did every single year, was paint.
What type of lens does it look like a Fresnel?
It isn't. Our Fresnel lens is long gone. That's just an automated airport beacon. Yeah. Yeah. This is how they deconstructed the boathouse. They brought out a barge with a crane, and because the stipulation was they had to save the timbers that were the primary structures inside of the boathouse, because they were over 100 years old and they were clear. They are actually 12 by 10s, and some of them are 28 feet long, and they have no knots in them whatsoever. So we insisted that they keep the timbers, and in order to do that effectively, they lifted the whole structure off the foundation, set it on the barge, and brought it into the river down by Alpena Oil where the coal pile is, and they literally took it apart piece by piece, and then they returned the timbers out to the island. You can see this is kind of in the river now. The pilings that you see there are what is left of the old foundation, because it was all wood and cribbing. The cribbing has all rotted away, and so the rock piles are left. Now that there is no building on it, it becomes the property of the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. So those are actual artifacts. And this is our nice new dock. And what a relief it was after 28 years to have a decent dock. That's, gets us to where we need to be. But as you can see on the drawing, that is our next future project. Finish the application to get the remaining 132 acres transferred to the Charter Township Alpena. And then this dock and walkway project, we got a grant and did the engineering design for this last year in partnership with the township, because we needed to know where is the best place to have this and how much is it going to cost. And how much is it going to cost was the biggest concern. We now know that it is $1.1 million. That includes all the permitting necessary and then the actual construction. So this dock will be handicapped accessible. We are in the process of completing another bedroom restoration upstairs. So it will be devoted to the U.S. Lighthouse service. There were two services on the island, one for the lighthouse and one for the life savings. This will be for the lighthouse service. We have a tremendous volume of artifacts that were donated back to the society from one of the former keepers, Peter Romes. Really talented guy. He actually made a lot of the furniture that he had in the keeper's house from wood that he harvested on the island. And the family has been so generous. They have donated all of that back to be used in a museum type setting. So we have all of that in our possession at this point in time. This summer, we're planning to hire an engineering firm to once again reassess the tower, because if you look at the pictures that you see of the way it looks now, we either have a structural failure that's underneath from the gunite, or we have a paint failure. And we're hoping it's just a paint failure, so it's not a real expensive fix, but we need to know that for sure. There's probably 4 grant sources available to take care of that problem, but we need to know what exactly the problem is. We also are applying for a grant on Friday from the America 250 Michigan brand new grant fund that just opened up to do a self-guided walking tour with interpretive signage at all the points of significant interest that there were on the island. So it will take you from the boat landing along the groom trail that we have in a whole loop back to the lighthouse and then back to the landing. We'll have little walking maps in a little bit more detail about what each site and the significance of it. But what we need to really focus on is how important the fish house was there and the cooperage that it had to the fishing industry in Alpena. In 1 year, they harvested over 12,000 pounds of whitefish that they sent downbound to Detroit and Buffalo, New York. In the period of time that we had a fishing industry here, it made over $2.5 million for the state of Michigan in economic income. So that's our plan this year. The walking tour will also have a subsequent video narration so that we can put it on our website, and we can host it on YouTube. We also have just gotten tentative approval to offer a copy to the Lady Michigan so that they can show it on board as they've got downtime. And we think this is really a valuable asset for people. A lot of people are not physically going to be able to go there. That island is not for a prima donna, I will tell you. It is rough, it is not smooth, and there's only 2 outhouses. So yeah. It's just always going to be a challenge for some people, and we'd like to share it. That's the whole idea behind saving it, is to be able to share it. And once people are educated, they agree. You know, what a fascinating place, what a valuable piece of history. So I will stop talking so that we can have time to view that short little video from Restless Viking. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Restless Viking. It's a couple in southern Michigan. She was an elementary teacher and he was an investment specialist. And now that they're retired, they do special little focus videos on all kinds of places around Michigan. And it's super interesting. And when we got their inquiry, we thought, okay, we're not sure. But what a delightful couple. And when they came, they didn't look like they had any video equipment with them. So the people working there that day were not at their finest.
Oh, goodness. My husband's actually in the video too. And, but this is like if you, I don't, if you follow one of the links in the previous, you can actually go, there's a live camera. So this is actually a shot from yesterday. So this is how it looked yesterday. There are several different perspectives that you can see. So if it's the Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory website, and you can go to Thunder Bay Island, and it's really helpful for us too before we go out, because we can see the wind speeds, we can see the temperature, and that helps us determine whether or not it's a good day to go out, not a good day to go out, because of course weather and weather conditions matter. So it's a pretty neat tool as well. But the site visit by Restless Viking was done on July 13th, my birthday. And it was, they did this 20-minute documentary, and it's been just a wonderful tool for us to bring awareness about Thunder Bay Island, the lighthouse, and the mission of the Preservation Society. And we're so, so grateful to them. It's had over 130,000 views already. So I think you're really going to enjoy it. It makes me actually emotional every time I watch it. So I think you'll really enjoy it.
This is Alpena, Michigan. Alpena made its fortunes in fish, then lumber, and now cement. The town grew up here on the river, and you would think that this is where the first settlement was, but it wasn't. The first settlement is 13 miles that way. A 215-acre island called Thunder Bay Island. And the island has the distinction for a lot of firsts in the area. And Poppins and I have arranged for a visit with the lighthouse keepers. We don't know what to expect on our way or out at the island, but isn't every adventure like that? You ready, Poppins?
Ready, handsome.
I'm Chuck.
I'm Poppins.
The channel's Restless Viking. Let's go on an adventure. So after about 7 miles or 8 miles or so, you come to North Point, and we left Alpena, which is kind of in the bay. We came out, and now we have to go that way to Thunder Bay Island, which is right out there. So I think we're close enough that you can see on these little cameras. We have 2 islands here, and we came from the bay. Alpena's about, I don't know, 8 or 9 miles that way. And we have Sugar Island and then Thunder Bay Island. So it's the 1830s, and Michigan is in the process of becoming a state. And settlers started to move up into this area, which was completely wilderness except for a couple forts like Fort Mackinac and maybe Fort St. Joseph. So they came up here to settle, and they didn't really often settle out here in the mainland. They chose islands to settle on. Part of the reason is the first big ship on the Great Lakes was Le Griffon. When they would stop in this area, they would stop on that island because it's a really easy mark to find. There's 2 islands there, and the area in between is very protected from wind and waves. They could land there. It's easy to see. When they started settlements, they kind of used the same concept, an easy to find place. But in addition, they didn't really know what the wilderness held, if the indigenous people were going to be friendly or not. So by being on an island, you had a little more safety by being out there. So eventually that settlement reached about 300 people. It had the first school, the first store. Today, no one stays there. The last permanent residents to leave would have been the Coast Guard back in the 1980s.
So before Michigan even became a state, Congress appropriated money to build a lighthouse. A crew of 12 men came out here to build the lighthouse. They'd gotten started, and they had built some walls and some parts, and then waves washed over the entire island during a storm. By 1832, they had a 21-foot base and a 40-foot high lighthouse built here.
The bugs will find you, Poppins.
I didn't think the bugs would be bad while we're out on the water.
And it's going to be a moment of truth, because you all know how I make a little fun of Poppins for always needing a bug shirt. And I'm not sure if I brought mine, but I think today's going to be the day that I wished I had. I did bring a bug shirt.
So this whole area was known as Shipwreck Alley.
So the lighthouse was here because it's dangerous. There's a shelf right here that starts of that limestone. And there's also a pretty big shelf you can see that goes out there. And it's claimed ships, but interestingly, it's claimed yachts. So that's the panacea. And a retired teacher was and his family was on a trip from Wisconsin to Florida. When they hit the south shelf here in heavy weather, the boat washed up on shore in 1988. So it's still claiming shipwrecks.
As we motored around the island, we passed over an easy-to-access shipwreck in 17 feet of water. The Mono Handset sank in 1907. She was taking shelter behind the island, carrying coal, caught fire, and burned to her waterline. All crew were saved thanks to being a few hundred yards from the life-saving station.
So in 1848, the New Jersey Governor Newell proposed life-saving stations to be placed along the coasts of the United States. So they started building them. There were quite a few in Michigan, and it wasn't until 1876 that they built one here on Thunder Bay Island, and that ushered in the era of the life-saving service and eventually the Coast Guard and their time on this island, which ended in the 80s. And right over there where the boat is moored is the remnants of the Coast Guard boathouse that was here. Just a few years ago, it was still standing, but I guess the weather and the ice got to it. You can see the foundation just below the water line. So from the boathouse, they had a dock that went inland, and there should be some pilings. You can see them over there, little skips of rocks. And we are docked, but probably 100 yards from shore. You got the dock, and then apparently it's marked easy wading path in, so all your electronics go in your bag, and we get off and we just head down the dock and we see what's going on. First, we'll shut off all the electronics, shut off the battery, take the key, crazy adventures, Poppins. So I think we go this way, Poppins.
All right.
So eventually the fishery declined and the village moved. Most of the people moved to what was up and coming Alpena because logging became the industry of the area. And you can see straight out there is where the Coast Guard boathouse was. You can see where the dock came in and then went that way. So if you were a Coast Guardman or if you were the life-saving service, you would have put your stuff on a trolley that would have gone from here about a half a mile to the other side of the island where the lighthouse was. And this is the remnants of that tramway coming up through here and going into the woods. We just have to find the trail. We know we're pretty close to it somewhere. Poppins is getting her backpack on.
Bug shirt.
And her bug shirt. Good idea, Poppins. I have mine still put away. Now today, part of Thunder Bay Island is owned by Alpena Township, I believe, and then the other part is owned by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and is a sanctuary, a wildlife sanctuary. And I think I hear the tractor coming.
Oh, I'm so glad. This is also a wild nature preserve for poison ivy.
Well, I think we have a ride coming, Poppins.
Hey.
That's an old tractor.
This is awesome.
Chuck Hayden?
Dave Skibbe.
Dave?
Dave, Martha.
Martha, nice to meet you.
Meet you.
So you've been out here working with this project for a long time, or?
Yeah, I got involved someplace around 2000.
That's Dave. His wife, she's the president of the Preservation Society. When she mentioned heading out to an island years ago for a work session with her lighthouse group, Dave was a bit taken aback. I mean, here's a woman who's not exactly a fan of water, poison ivy, or boats, yet before long, her passion for preserving these beacons of the sea pulled Dave right into the thick of it. And it's not just a casual involvement. They're neck deep in what can only be described as a Herculean task. It's like trying to navigate a storm with a leaky boat. Every step forward brings a new challenge, and every challenge makes you wonder how they manage to keep going.
Well, it was nice to meet you. We'll let you get back to work.
Very good. Thank you.
Well, I guess that wasn't our ride. I guess we're on our own.
He's got work.
How are you guys doing? I'm Chuck. That's Poppins.
Hi, Chuck. I'm Dan.
Dan, nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Rick, nice to meet you.
Tom.
Tom, nice to meet you.
Chuck it is?
Chuck, yes, sir.
All right.
Yep.
Where's this? Hello, Tom.
I'm Dan.
Dan, nice to meet you.
She really enjoyed the fairy forest, she called it, coming
Yeah.
in.
It is. The 3 colors of forget-me-nots are this thick, and they cover the whole path. An incredible woman who was the wife of the life-saving service captain John Person,
Yeah.
Celia Person. She grew extraordinary flowers out here, if you can imagine. She was the first female boat captain on the Great Lakes.
Really?
Her license copy is upstairs. In one of
Seriously?
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's awesome.
And she would pilot her own little, they call it the flower yacht. She would take it from here into Alpena and deliver flowers to her friends. I mean, it's hard to
So
visualize.
she left quite a legacy, but the
They both
flowers are
did.
Yeah, they both
They
did.
both
Like,
did. Quite obviously.
Aha! Was this this is the mechanical room, then the boiler room?
It is, yep. And we leave this open in case someone gets in distress on a boat.
They have shelter.
So that they have shelter. So we never lock this outside door. That wall, they used to do big, humongous landscape puzzles. The Coast Guard were bored, and so when they were done, they took construction adhesive and glued them to the wall. So we had no.
So this was a day room, and
This was their day room.
this was a little different than most lighthouses because the Coast Guard stayed here for so long.
We had so many major projects completely restored back to when they remodeled in 1955. This is the way it looked the day that this gentleman moved into this room. This is my heroine, Celia Person. Yep. Oh, yeah.
And that's her boat?
That's her boat.
So the Coast Guard, in their stories, talk about the Jeep that they had in the island that they would drive around on the 2 roads. And there it is.
So everything in here is the way it was in 1868 when they built this building.
That's Sue. She's like the godmother of the Preservation Society, a role she stumbled into more than 2 decades ago. It started with a simple request. We just need a secretary, they said. It wasn't long before she found herself elbow deep in grime and grit on some small remote island. That's when the magic happened. She's got a fire and a brain packed with knowledge that makes some of us look like kindergartners. She's navigated the labyrinth of bureaucratic red tape, wrestled with countless government agencies, and probably faced moments of despair that would have broken lesser souls. But there she was, right in the thick of it, armed with tools and surrounded by dust, breathing new life into history. Her boundless energy has brought this place a few more decades of breath.
I do not want to go to an island. I'm allergic to poison ivy, but I'm going to humor you and go. And it was a life-changing experience. We came to open the island, and that was a hook. I mean, it was just, I just felt their spirit.
Well, I'm retired, and if I'm not doing something productive, it does something to my self-worth. Now, pulling staples out of this wall today is not a big deal, but to me, there's a little bit of legacy I'm leaving for the next group.
And that was Dan. His commitment isn't loud, but it's profound. He's driven to leave a legacy that ensures the sweat and struggles of today won't be forgotten tomorrow.
Look at the view.
It's enough to make you question yourself. Here we are enjoying the fruits of their labor while they're out there pouring every ounce of their being into preserving a piece of our past.
Wow.
It's a stark reminder of the difference between those who merely consume and those who create something.
Look at that. What an amazing view. But the top of the Thunder Bay Island Lighthouse. One of the first lighthouses on the Great Lakes. The lighthouse is definitely a mark on this island in its history. Let's go check out some more marks that were left.
So they used this trolley to bring their gear from the dock out that way in toward the lighthouse.
Because my wife and I, we come out here all the time and walk around, and but we didn't know there was an organization that could, you know, maintain it.
Yeah.
And, I thought it was government owned or something, you know.
Sure.
And then he talked to me about it, and as soon as he said, "Would you like to?" I said, "Heck yeah." Yeah.
That is fantastic.
I think it's an awesome thing to do.
So basically, this is the seafloor that existed millennia ago.
Yeah, and if you look down, you'll see coral and
So interestingly, we're looking for some carvings in the limestone, and the entire island is part of the Niagara Escarpment, where the ancient seabed has risen up, and nothing but limestone, which is why cement is such a prevalent industry up in this area. So in May of 1923, the U.S. Lighthouse Service and some of the members here carved their name into the limestone, and there's a few of these throughout the island. And it's very cool that they've left their mark here. Not only the lighthouse, but a little piece of history that you don't see every day. And here's the rock you start to find names everywhere. Lighthouse keeper from the 1830s, there's his name. That's so cool. In 1846, the first store in the county was built here on the island, and the 160 people of the community harvested 12,000 barrels of fish that year. And there were a fleet of fishing boats on the island that numbered 31. After the Lighthouse Saving Service arrived in 1876, in 1878, a Captain John Persons became the captain of the Lighthouse Service, and he served from then until 1912, and he's credited with 1,000 lives saved under his command.
So the person's family lived here year-round for 38 years.
Well, we'll let you guys get back to work. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you. I'm all plastic.
Look at me.
Okay.
Sue.
It's good to meet you, sir.
Oh, don't be silly.
We hope to be in touch, and we'll
Yeah.
talk more. But thank you so much
Yeah.
for your hospitality. We take our leave of the lighthouse with our chocolate chip cookies. Some amazing people that are working hard to make this work. They do it for free, and they do a lot of work. The first step was to replace the roof to protect what they had. That was expensive. Then to protect the light tower with special types of coatings. So hats off to them. So in 1915, the U.S. Life Saving Service became the U.S. Coast Guard. And then in 1930, they built the new Coast Guard station here, which was an era that lasted until 1980.
So when the Coast Guard men were here on the island, their families would sometimes come for a couple weeks as like a summer vacation. And the lighthouse families were thrilled to have new people, especially the children of the lighthouse keeper. They had new friends to play with. They had adventures. Can you imagine having an island to yourself?
And the last Coast Guardsman left in 1980. Coast Guard bulldozed a bunch of the buildings down. Thankfully, they left the lighthouse and the fog signal building, put in excess inventory, and later they were gonna dispose of it. And luckily, in the 90s, the Lighthouse Preservation Society for the Thunder Bay Island Lighthouse stepped up, took possession of it. In partnership with the township, they've started to bring it back. So the whole history of building on this island, from its first settlement to the lighthouse to the Coast Guard station, it all took a lot of effort. It all took a lot of risk. And that effort to restore it is kind of the same story. They still need help, and they need money, and they have a task ahead of them that at times might seem impossible. And it's those few volunteers that make it happen. Well, the community has other things to worry about, the township and these volunteers are doing their best to make it work. And that's quite a story.
And we're going to help. Poppins and I are donating $1,000 of our YouTube revenue to their cause. This old tractor is on its last legs, but it's all they have to unload boats, pull in docks, and generally do all the critical work. They really can't get along without it. We've put a link in the description so that we can all show our appreciation for their work and to lend a hand by donating toward a new tractor. Please give it some consideration. I'm sure they would appreciate any help in preserving this little corner of our history. And make sure you add a note that you're donating for their new tractor.
You can see a few years ago when Michigan was experiencing its high water, how high up the water was by all the dead vegetation. And interestingly, this island's even had storms, as Poppins mentioned, on the south end, that the waves washed completely over the island. There's some old sayings by travelers that if you want to learn about a culture, have their food. Or if you want to learn about a culture, go to their graveyards. Well, if you want to learn about a culture, go visit the people that are doing stuff for free to make this world a little bit better, or to remember this world's history. Then you'll learn about a culture. Well, we're almost back to the boat. If you ever have doubts about humanity, just come to an island like this where people are working hard to restore an old lighthouse, or that are just working against impossible odds. And you'll meet some amazing people who work together as a team, who get along. They just care about making the world a better place.
That's cool.
And that's who we look for. And so from Thunder Bay Island in Lake Huron near Alpena, I'm Chuck.
I'm Poppins.
Thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again. Yep. So the volunteers, to bring their gear in, and when they're leaving, they have to weight all their gear along that path that we walked. So they have to carry their equipment, everything that they need, waiting in the water. What a dedicated group of people.